Welcome to the 12th Annual Southwestern Rail Conference. Before we start here, if Gary Thomas and Bob Balser will join Joe Black at the back side over here and get wired up, we're going to give you a wireless microphone. A little bit about Texas Rail Advocates. We were formed back in 2000, and originally we were formed to promote the South Central High-Speed Rail Corridor, which was one of close to a dozen rail corridors around the country that were designated for high-speed rail. We've evolved over the years into a more robust organization. We concentrate on ways of finding ways to both move people and goods through the state of Texas and in our adjoining states. Some of the things that we've done over the years, we have been instrumental in helping to form the TxDOT Rail Division and giving Bill Clavin a real job for a few years. We've been working very hard to energize public-private partnerships. One of the things that we were a stakeholder in, and we kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and I remember some of us met with Matt Rose once, and he said, if there's anything you're talking about, it's Tower 55, Tower 55, Tower 55. And it was a great public-private partnership with the federal government, the state government, all the stakeholders involved, City of Fort Worth, the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and really the throughput now is amazing compared to where it was a few years ago. I believe it was somewhere in the 20 to 30% range of an increase in freight traffic that can now go through Tower 55. This is our 12th conference. Hopefully we'll have a 13th next year. We may have to get a bigger space. But also we do a lot of public outreach during the year as well, and we do try to promote both the movement of goods and people through the state of Texas and our surrounding states. Now, without any further ado, I want to introduce Josh Corin, and you got your mic all set up there, or did we give you one yet? Okay, go see the folks in the back here, and we'll grab one and wire you up while I'm talking about all your accomplishments. Josh is one of our board members and been with us for quite a while. He is Talgo's Director of Operations and Product Development. Josh was born and raised in the Boston, Massachusetts area, but I don't hear that accent as much as I used to. I think we Texasized him a little bit since he was down here for a while. He holds a BS in Mechanical Engineering from MIT and an MBA from the Katz School of Management at the University of Pittsburgh. He's been a registered professional engineer in Illinois since 1976, and he's worked in the railroad and railroad supply industry exclusively since 1966. So, where's he worked? New York Central, Illinois Central, and the Alaska Railroad, having been chief mechanical engineer there for the latter of 21 years. Had a chance to ride on the Alaska Railroad year before last, and it's amazing that the work these people can do up there in such unusual conditions, both during the summer and during the winter as well. And he's also held positions with Westinghouse Electric's Transportation Equipment Division and the Passenger Division of Pullman Standard, where he was manager of manufacturing engineer. Since the beginning of 2008, Josh has been the Director of Operations at Talgo, and now for over 10 years has maintained under contract the 5 Talgo trains that are currently in service in the Amtrak Cascades in the Pacific. Tonight, Josh is going to moderate a panel that we have aptly called Urban and Regional Rail, Relieving Congestion Indigestion. And if you have traveled on the roads here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and if you've gone between Austin and San Antonio, you know that you will get indigestion from the congestion. So with that, I want to introduce Josh. Come on up. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Indigestion reminds me to ask, did anybody enjoy this meal? Let's give Bernie a hand. I think this may be the best one yet. Well, welcome to everybody here. This is also the biggest one yet, I think. We're going to have an interesting panel, so I think maybe everybody's ready for a nap, but I think you probably won't want to take one because we've got some interesting folks to discuss this topic. The first one is, and I'll come on up and have a seat, and as I introduce you, Joe Black. is rail director of the Lone Star Rail District. You know, a lot of us are boomers, but Joe's a boomer in the railroad sense. Several of us are. He started out with SEPTA. And the East Coasters know what SEPTA is, the Southeast Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. And he's been around a few other places too since then, so including Northern Indiana Commuter District, which most of us probably still remember, the Chicago South Shore and South Bend. So he's seen it all, I think. Now he's down here where we need him. Do this in alphabetical order? Well, it's too late to do that. Bob Balser is Vice President of Rail for the Fourth Ward Transportation Authority, which he joined in November of 14. He's been in the industry for more than 30 years and has overseen a number of large transportation projects, and one that's dear to my heart is from Nashville. Nashville has done some remarkable things for a small city. And certainly not last but certainly not least, Gary Thomas, who's maybe not so much a boomer because he's been here in Dallas for quite some time, and the introduction I have here says he's doubled the transportation mileage, the light rail mileage in Dallas twice. And I find that really remarkable. Early in my career, I worked for Westinghouse Electric in Pittsburgh, and I distinctly remember seeing a full-page ad from the Chamber of Commerce in, I think it was Houston. It was a Texas city, and it said you should move here because we have no rail transportation. That was a selling point back in the 1960s. So, well, I don't think it's a selling point anymore. I think things are turning around, and it's in no small part to the gentlemen like these folks here. So today I, for the first time, got a chance to ride from the airport, from DFW Airport downtown, well, to here, one-seat ride, without taking a shuttle bus. Thank you very much. Aside from the fact we've got to talk about the signage at the airport. But aside from that, it was a wonderful, wonderful ride, and but it got me thinking about really a wonderful airport to drive to. It's very easy to drop somebody off right almost at his gate. It's a bit of a challenge to serve with transit. But I think we're coming around to finding a way to do that. DART is presence now at Terminal A, and I guess the Cotton Belt route is going to come in at Terminal B. But that kind of troubles me because are we going to have a Chinese wall between these two? Is there going to be any coordination there?
Probably will be. I think it only makes sense that we would, absolutely. And we've already, the plans for access to the DFW airport have been underway for years, and some of you have actually been involved in that time. I think you were probably involved in some of the conversations early on as we looked at how we come into DFW airport and from the east and from the west and how we make that connection. So those plans are already pretty well on in our long-range plan. We've already got what we call a big loop on the orange line that would connect to the Cotton Belt, as well as the east side of the Cotton Belt that would come in to Terminal B. I think the challenge, of course, is connecting from Terminal A to Terminal B, as many of us know.
Well, that's a better answer than I was afraid I was going to get. At least there's some planning involved there. Even more surprising than Dallas-Fort Worth area, I guess, is the middle part of Texas. And I understand there's some thoughts of commuter rail, actually a regional rail between San Antonio and Austin. Is that right?
That's right. And we're calling it regional rail because it has elements of both commuter rail. It'll serve both rider sheds for San Antonio and Austin, but it also has an intercity aspect, almost like the Northeast Corridor. So there'll be express trains that will be operated between Austin and San Antonio downtowns and serving a few major stops in between. But you'll be able to do almost any ride on that system will be faster than you can drive it today. And if anybody has driven I-35 lately between Austin and San Antonio, it's no wonder why we can do that. We could have hand carts and we would be faster than the traffic on I-35 sometimes, but we won't do that. We're going to have modern passenger rail equipment. So.
You said the express trains, would there also be local trains?
There would be local trains which would serve that commuter market with a maximum of about a 30-minute ride from the furthest points out on the system into the downtowns, and then about a 1 hour and 10-minute express trip between downtown Austin and San Antonio. It's about an 80 some odd mile ride. You can't do it, in all honesty, you can't do it in an hour and 10 minutes, even when the traffic is good.
Is there any thought to, back to this area, is there any thought to going east from the airport?
East from the airport.
On maybe the Cotton Belt extension of the Fort Worth line?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I think, as everybody probably is aware, DART owns a cotton belt from the north part of Fort Worth all the way to Wiley, which is a suburb north and east of Dallas. And we acquired that right away in 1989, roughly. And so it's in our financial plan to have rail on that corridor in 2035. And so that's the good news. The challenge, of course, is as I say that out loud, and a lot of people in this room have been very involved in that over the years, they said, that's nice, but we really would like it by 2020. 2017 would be good, but Gary, we really need it, and we need it a lot quicker than 2035. And so there's a lot of conversation, and has been for several years now, on how we could accelerate that corridor. Obviously, our partners to the west are working very hard to have their portion, and Bob will talk a lot about that, in place very soon. So we're working on how we can put together a funding package, funding scenarios, and public-private partnership opportunities to possibly advance the eastern portion much, much sooner than 2035.
I think it was 2 years ago at this meeting, I heard something that was a real takeaway for me. One of the participants said that rail transit makes a lot of money. The trouble is, it doesn't make it for the operator, it makes it for the real estate people.
I think I said that.
Well, it was very, I don't remember who said it, but I think it was very wise counsel, because, and the public-private partnership's obviously the way to go. Does anybody, if anybody has any questions for these folks, feel free to ask. You get one here? No.
Should I do a presentation? Is that what we're supposed to do now?
Maybe.
If there are no questions, I'd be happy to give a project update. Okay. I'm going to try to keep this quick because I know you just got done drinking and eating. And if you're anything like me, that's not a good combination. I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of the project. A lot of y'all know me, know the project, know about it already. So for those of you that don't know it, I'm going to hopefully teach you something tonight. For those of you who do know it, maybe you'll learn something new. Maybe that's some of the stuff that's going on right now, some of the good stuff that's going on. The district is made up of members from Williamson County all the way down to Bexar County. It's about a 120-mile corridor all told. It includes the potential station stops at about 24 locations, which we are hoping to shrink a little bit as part of the EIS process. But you can see there's a lot of member cities, counties, the transit agencies, the two major agencies, Capital Metro and VIA, are members, and also the two rural transit agencies. Both MPOs are members, and one of our newest members is the Austin Community College District, who just joined with a value capture agreement where they're going to agree to pay us a portion of the incremental tax revenues, the growth in tax revenues in zones around stations that are in their district. And it was a really interesting debate that took the night that they voted to join the district. And it basically centered around this. Is transportation our mission? We're a college district. Is transportation really a part of what we're about? And the conclusion at the end, before the vote was taken, was if our students can't get to class, we can't educate them. So yes, we are in the transportation business. So they came on board, and we're hoping that the Alamo Community College District in San Antonio will also come to the same conclusion. This is an interesting map. You can actually Google this yourself if you want to take a look at this. It's kind of fun. It's from Forbes magazine. If you Google Forbes magazine American migration, you'll get here. And this is based on tax return data. So if you had a tax return from one place one year and another place the next, it tracks that. And what this shows is, this is for Travis County, which is the county that Austin is located in. All the the blue lines are people who are coming in. The red lines are people who are leaving. So the first very obvious conclusion, which you know if you live in the state of Texas, is that there's a heck of a lot of people coming here and there's not a heck of a lot of people leaving. But the thing that I find interesting about it is where those people are coming from. Almost to a person, now there's a few here and there outliers, but almost to a person, they're coming from places that have well-developed, mature, high-capacity rail transit systems. And what we're finding is when we go out and speak to these people, they expect this as an amenity. And they're surprised, shocked even, that we don't have a more well-developed rail transit system in the state capital and one of the largest cities in Texas, San Antonio. So this is a picture of I-35 in Austin from 1957. It's in the kind of the infancy of I-35. This is at Riverside Drive. We know that TxDOT funding is limited, although it's growing. The legislature has done some really great work over the last 4 years in getting new funding into highway planning and construction. Hopefully that pans out with the shale plays not doing so well anymore, but hopefully the department will be able to make some real progress with that, because we need more investment in our highways. We do need more highways. We need more of everything, frankly. But the rights-of-way for our region's highways in Austin, San Antonio were established in the 50s through the 70s, and those rights-of-way were established to handle the demand that existed at that time, and it's just not the same today. In fact, the Capital Area MPO data indicates that by 2035, we're going to need anywhere from 12 to 14 additional lanes into the center of Austin to support the demand. And if you can picture in your head what that might look like, it takes out things like Austin Police Headquarters, many of the hotels. It takes out a couple historic cemeteries. It takes out some residential areas. And maybe most importantly for some people in the room, it takes out Royal Memorial Stadium, which would be a real problem if you're from UT. If you're an Aggie, you might not have a problem with that, but most people in Austin don't want the football stadium to go away. So anyway, this is 57. This is 2011. And the only difference in that picture is the volume of traffic. The footprint of the road hasn't changed 1 inch since 1957. And guess what, folks? It's probably not going to change all that much going forward into the future, because the development has pushed up against the sides of the highway, making it a very expensive proposition to acquire right-of-way and to pour yet more and more concrete to try to address the demand. And I may be a little biased. I'm in the rail business. I tend to think that we need to do everything. We need to throw the kitchen sink at this issue, which means road construction. But if you think that you're going to be able to handle our demand issues by simply pouring more concrete, then I have several bridges I'd like to sell you in both New York and Philadelphia, because that's not going to work, folks. This is one of my favorite pictures to illustrate why commuter rail makes sense. This is from Toronto, Ontario. Basically, what we're telling people is that the future L-Star system, once it's up and running, depending on the level of service we operate, how many cars are on the train, how frequently we operate, we can replace the equivalent of 2 to 8 additional highway lanes, north and south, in that corridor, which is huge. And for the incremental cost of doing it compared to the cost of constructing highways, it's pretty significant. But the amazing thing about this picture, besides the fact that it indicates that my board chairman really needs to get a life, because he actually counted each one of these cars in this picture. I didn't do that. I just listened to him. But he counted every single one of these vehicles, and he assumed correctly that there's probably one person in each of those. And what he found was that all the people in all those cars and trucks up and down that highway could all fit on those 3 rail cars. So that's a pretty powerful statement. If we're talking about sustainability, if we're talking about real transportation options, I think we have to include rail as part of the mix. It's just something that we have to do. Texas or not. When people say, people will never get out of their cars and trucks in Texas, well then, what I say is that assumes that Texans are really stupid, and I personally don't think Texans are really stupid. And Gary's system, DART, is a great example of that. Largest light rail system in North America, hugely successful. If you offer a good alternative to the automobile, people will take it. They will. They just will. Because people are people and they make rational decisions. I won't go over this in exhaustive detail because we've already talked about a little bit of it, but one of the about 30 to 40 Union Pacific freight trains that operate on the existing Union Pacific line between Austin and San Antonio and put them on a new line, grade separated line, higher velocity, higher capacity line to the east. That does a few things. Of course, for us, it frees up capacity on the existing line so we can operate a frequent, robust, attractive passenger rail service. But it also offers the possibility by making rail freight more efficient, and I think this is a model for the rest of the state, frankly. By making rail freight more efficient, it offers shippers the opportunity to use rail more than trucks. Rail shipping is cheaper than shipping by truck. If we can make it more timely, more efficient, faster, then it's a no-brainer for long-distance shippers to use rail freight. So we think that this is a start towards doing that. A lot of y'all know what an environmental impact statement process is, the NEPA, and I'm not going to go through in exhaustive detail what that is, but that's the part of the project that we're in right now. So technically we're still in project development. We intend to have a record of decision sometime in the 2017-2018 time frame. At which point we fully intend to be prepared to bring a P3 D-Bomb F contractor on board to deliver the project. So we're doing some work right now to actually begin that procurement work within the next year. So this is where we are. We just got done agency and public scoping. We are doing our alternatives analysis. We are about to go back out before the public in March to present all the reasonable alternatives that we've identified that meet the need and purpose of the project. We'll go swiftly after that into preparing a draft EIS, conduct our public hearings, final EIS, and finally a record of decision. It's a very aggressive schedule, and when people ask me, realistically, do you think it can be done? I say, yes, I do. It is aggressive. We understand that. But we think that the need is there. And so everything that we do, we're trying to do with some kind of expedition. Proposed stations, like I said, there's up to 24 of them. It serves the two major cities, 7 stations in Austin and San Antonio. 1 station in most of the other cities, with the exception of San Marcos. San Marcos wants a station at the Outlet Mall in San Marcos, which is, believe it or not, is the #1 tourist attraction in the state of Texas, are the San Marcos outlets. So we're going to put a station there. This is just a close-up on the Austin rider shed stations, the locations that we're looking at. San Antonio area, same thing. So those are the 2 rider sheds that I talked about, where there will be a lot of commuter traffic with people traveling from suburbs into the cities to access work, education, and things like that. And there will also be that overlay market for people who need to travel from downtown to downtown for business, for educational purposes, and things like that. So the estimated capital costs that we have right now, and I fully expect these to grow, just candid right up front, but right now the cost that we have is about $2.4 billion, which includes $1.6 billion for that east line, the new freight line for UP. And the way that the deal works at a very high level is basically that the Lone Star Rail District builds a new east freight line for the Union Pacific, turns over ownership of that line to Union Pacific, and Union Pacific will turn over ownership of their current line between Taylor, Texas, and San Antonio, Texas to the rail district. We will own, operate, maintain, and dispatch that line. I'm not going to do death by PowerPoint and read each of these, but one of the major successes that we've had lately, and one of the reasons why I think it was me that said that there's money to be made in rail, it's just not made unfortunately by the public agencies, is because we are using value capture in what I think is probably a fairly innovative first-time way in the cities that we're going to be offering service to. We have a provision in our legislation that created the rail district that allows us to do a very streamlined version of tax increment financing. And I won't bore you to death with the details of that, but really what it entails is that the growth that occurs around station locations, within a half mile of that station, a portion of that, sometimes all of it, sometimes in some cities' cases, 100% of that growth increment will be dedicated towards the ongoing operations and maintenance of the rail system. What it does is it creates a real nexus, especially for fiscally conservative elected officials who generally tend to just reflexively be against this kind of thing. It creates a nexus between the rail station and the operating money that's needed to keep it going. So instead of having a subsidy that's just, we need a subsidy to continue operating the system, it creates a real connection in people's minds between, okay, without the train station, we wouldn't see this money in the future. It would be somewhat less because of the development that's going to take place. So if we put a train station here and we get an additional $2 million over the next 10 years, well, that should probably go to the rail district. Again, no death by PowerPoint, but there's a lot of deal points that we've negotiated with the cities, and we think we've given the cities a really good deal. We've given them several off-ramps, so if they want to get out, they can get out. It's a really good deal in that we have not asked any city to guarantee a payment amount. We have not asked any city to guarantee an amount from their general fund. It's all based on value capture. Yeah, this is just schematically what I won't bore you with that. Basically, the estimated timetable that we have, right now we have agreements already done, already completed. The arrangements are there. The money is going into TIF accounts. In San Marcos, Austin, I mentioned Austin Community College, New Braunfels, and Schertz. Georgetown and Buda are going to be considering their agreements very shortly. And then San Antonio, Bexar County, and VIA have put us in their budget for September 2015. We will be hopefully completing those agreements in March to April. And we're also looking at a joint operations agreement with VIA, the Transit Authority in San Antonio, to help pay for some of the service and also do some joint planning on other lines around San Antonio. The most significant piece of this, again, I won't read the whole thing for you, but the gateway to the capital funding for us is establishing the local funding. You can't even really get in the door with a New Starts program or RIF or TIFIA or anything like that unless you can demonstrate that you have local skin in the game and you have local money that's committed to the project. So that's why we've been prioritizing that along with our EIS as the first part of the project. This is my contact info. If you go to lonestarrail.com, my phone number is there, my telephone number, my email address, my postal address, all that stuff. We're a very fiscally frugal government agency, maybe one of the most fiscally frugal ones you've ever seen. I don't have an assistant, so I answer all my own emails. I answer all my own phone calls. So if you have a question, comment, anything of that nature, I'd welcome you to call me or drop me an email, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. And that's it. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I hope you learned a little something. So thank you.
Thank you. You guys have PowerPoints too? No? I didn't realize. You want to go first?
Sure. So we're waiting on the tech guys to get me up on the screen here. So how many people rode the train in today? This is a great region to be in commuter rail, and I'm fortunate because I can walk to the ITC in Fort Worth and ride the TRE and then come in on the Orange Line with DART. It's a great place to be. I grew up in New York. There's a lot of public transit there. I'm accustomed to public transit, and this region in Texas is just fantastic. Plus the weather's good. It's not going to snow this weekend like it is up in New York. So anyway, I'm going to talk a bit about TexRail. I'll try to move fast because I know everybody ate, and boy, was the food good, and the dessert as well. Probably one of the first things I just start out by saying is there's so many people in this room that we've partnered with to get TexRail going, and I just can't say enough about that. You know, the folks at DART have been instrumental in this. The Class 1s, Union Pacific, BNSF, all the contractors, our folks that we hope to go to construction with for the CMGC process are here. Most of the design folks are here. This is a great region to be in to do this kind of work because there's so much talent. I just can't say enough about that. And it's not something that we can do on our own. So we've got a lot of help, and a lot of our partners are here. And that's just so good to see in a project like this. So what's TexRail? You kind of see the map here. We start at the old TNP station, 27.2 miles, and go up into Terminal B at DFW Airport, and we will have a walkway between Terminal A and Terminal B, and I'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. Just to kind of show you the folks that are involved, on the professional side, and of course the FTA and our PMOC and the T, our project management group with CH2M Hill couldn't do this without them, and our real estate folks. And then we go on down through URS and Parsons and Urban Engineers, and I know there's a lot of folks in this room, Herzog, Arch Western, Zollers, Stadler, which is the rail car company, and HKS, the folks that are going to build the station at the airport. So lots of great partners. Project overview, we're going to come in right at $996 million to complete the project from start to finish. 9 opening day stations, that is full build. Average cost per station right at $10 million. 36.6 million per mile, and again, the total corridor length at 27.2 miles. So where does all the money go? This pie chart kind of sums it up, and this is where we finished up here most recently. And the construction piece includes EMF, our equipment maintenance facility, and a bunch of other factors. But probably the biggest piece, construction 458, we're going to come in on day one with positive train control and of course, a centralized traffic control system. We're talking about sharing some of those things with the TRE, so there's a lot of regional aspects to this project. Right-of-way acquisitions at $133 million, a lot of real estate. Vehicles, $113 million. That's going to be Stadler DMUs, and I'll talk briefly about that. Professional services, $111 million, design, the architects, lots of legal stuff. Capitalized finance cost at $26 million. We've made a request to the FDA to get some of the full funding grant money early, which would allow us to eliminate $21 million of that 26 and take it back down to $5 million. We could put that back in contingency, and contingency is right at $68 million, and that's about where we expect to go into the project with that as unallocated. So what does it look like? AM peak, we'll have 30-minute headways. Same thing in PM peak, off-peak and weekends on opening day, 90-minute headways, and then 60-minute headways in 2030. Daily train movements, we're going to put 42 passenger trains a day on this part of the Cotton Belt. That's a pretty big change from what they're seeing today, which is 3 trains a week with the Fort Worth and Western. So that's going to be a sizable increase on what's been going on in the Cotton Belt for quite a long time. Travel time end to end, of course this is from the TNP station all the way into the terminal, right at 52 minutes in both directions. Daily ridership projections, the 2015 numbers, around 8,000 a day. 2018 a bit above 9,000. In 2035 we're bumping up against 14,000 passengers a day. Parking at the ITC station, well, if you're familiar with ITC, that's really the intermodal transit center, just like the acronym says. Amtrak comes in there, Greyhound, the TRE, all of the T's services. We even have a enterprise rental car company there, so it truly is an intermodal. Lots of feeder service in there and lots of options to connect with everything else. Some of our newer partners, North Richland Hills, there's a lot of parking there at 390 and 562. And then, of course, Grapevine and DFW Airport North. And I'll try to move fast through this, and if there's questions, I guess I can take them at the end. So where are we at? We awarded the Parsons Trans Systems contract for final design in November 2014. That's done. The final design, 100% is out there with the IFB. We're pricing it out now. We awarded the CMGC pre-construction phase contract to Archer, Western, Herzog in June of 2015, and we're hoping to move into the phase 2, which would be the construction part. We awarded the vehicle contract to Stadler and Busnang in June of 2015, and again, they're going to be DMUs, the Flirt, and I'll talk briefly about that. The EMF design, the equipment maintenance facility contract went to Hewitt-Zollars in June of 2015. We expect to get the full funding grant agreement award in the second quarter of 2016 calendar year, and we are going to begin revenue service before the last day of 2018. It's going to happen. Again, so we've got a FY16 new starts rating, a medium high, amended record of decision received in April. The FTA gave us permission to enter the engineering phase of the project in June of 2015. We were busy in June, as you can see, and I just can't go past that and say, it's so funny when you deal with the government that this is the engineering phase, and at that point we've got a lot of the engineering done. It seems kind of ironic. We were able to go through the design phase with Parsons Trans Systems for the big design initiative. 60% came in June, 95% in October. We finished the IFB design, and that's out for pricing now. And when we say we've begun acquiring real estate, that's somewhat of an understatement. We're pushing pretty hard to do all of that. And thankfully, most of the major railroad agreements were signed December 17th of 2015. And again, that's where the partnerships really come in, because we deal with quite a few entities in this process, and that's a big thing to put all those agreements together and kind of make it work. But I just can't say enough about how everybody worked with us to get this done. So where do we go from here? Of course, we've completed the final design in the last quarter of calendar year 2015. We anticipate the FFGA in the second quarter of 16, and right now we're also requesting a letter of no prejudice to start early construction. We're looking to start the formal construction and testing phase the second quarter of 2016 and finish up in the fourth quarter of 2018, which is when revenue service would begin, as you see there on the last bullet. Grapevine's going to be a little bit different, and there are some specialty stations, and you can kind of, if you've been to Grapevine, you know, it's a railroad town. They've got the steam engine. They like kind of that antique look, so it'll be just a bit different. But for the most part, this is the platform and you know, and the sunshade and the seating and things like that you would expect at a full-blown commuter rail station. This drawing, this is kind of interesting. We brought in the North Richland Hills stations, you know, quite a ways into the project that helped with our ridership. But what you're looking at here is the Iron Horse station and a lot of TOD that's planned. This is kind of exciting. This is when you know that you're doing the right thing, when you've got TOD planned before you've even broke ground on the stations. And a lot of help from our folks at Urban Engineers on this to kind of make all this work. But if you look, you can see the platform kind of dead center on the top of the slide, and then to the right, most of that is the transit parking. And then there's a bunch of residential and retail in there, and the next slide kind of lays that out. The total site area is 7.26 acres. There's going to be 469 apartment units, 5 residential courtyards, retail space, 2 parking garages, and surface parking. So again, I think this kind of shows us that we're headed in the right direction, and this is exciting stuff. The next slide here shows the DFW North Station. So when we cross 114 and we get into the airport, this is that station that's, you know, quite a ways. It's about 2 miles from the terminal, but it's on the airport's property. And this is another one where we're going to see TOD right away, and this is the plan. This is what we're seeing out there on the airport. And just to kind of lay out what'll actually take place there would be 2 warehouses, 4 call centers. There'll be about 357 TexRail parking spaces on the airport. Remember, we're about 2 miles out from the terminal there. 150 warehouse spaces, parking spaces, and 773 call center spaces. Big call center, yeah. As we go through Terminal B, this is sort of the rendering of what we think conceptually it's going to look like. And remember, the folks at the airport who have really been big supporters of this will build Terminal B at the airport. We don't do that. And that's similar to what DART did. So they've done this already, and they've got an idea how to do it. And really, when you look at the DART station, if you just flip it over, ours is going to be very similar. So they're going to do very much the same thing. So this is conceptually what it would look like. This is an aerial, and you can see the DART station at Terminal A and the TexRail station at Terminal B, DART station being on the right, Terminal B on the left, and there would be a connector between the two, you know, so you could go from TexRail to DART, or, you know, there would also be a place there for buses to pull up and the kiss and ride and drop off and things like that. So we think that this is going to work really well. Conceptually, this is what they're saying the walkway is going to look like between the 2 spaces. So, you know, again, that's kind of exciting. Moving right along, we get into the DMU rail car that we're going to put in place. And again, this is a Stadler Flirt. This will be the first time that it's been in the U.S. Here we have a picture of my boss, our CEO, and Peter Schooler, who's the owner of Stadler Rail. Stadler Rail owns a bunch of companies in Europe. There's 1,200 of these Flirt DMUs in operation in Europe. So it's not something new, but it'll be new to the U.S. We'll be the first ones to bring them in. It's the 3rd generation Flirt. This kind of shows you, you know, what it's going to look like. This is actually the approved paint scheme. So when you see the train, this is it. I think this picture kind of shows it just a little bit better. You can see the power plant in the center of the vehicle. We're going to have 2 Tier 4 engines, Tier 4 approved EPA engines in the power plant. It's capable of taking 4, but we only need 2 to get this thing going. Altogether, it's about a 450 passenger vehicle, around 220 seated, and the rest standees. You know, it's a roomy design. It's comfortable. There's a really low noise level, about half of what you get in a locomotive hauled coach. That's kind of exciting. You know, when the vehicle is switched to a DMU, for the most part, all the noise issues that we had in our environmental study were mitigated because we switched vehicles, and this thing is so much quieter. It's got double leaf swing plug doors and expandable platform gates. Basically, everything's level boarding, and this is real easy to get on and off. Whoop, this thing jumped on me. Here, this kind of shows, well, this shows exactly what the platform is going to be like. So at every passenger door on this vehicle, it's going to be completely level boarding. If you have a stroller, if you're using a wheelchair, if you're bringing a bike, or you're just walking on, you're just going to roll, walk, whatever, right in. We'll have restrooms on the train, and the restroom is accessible as well. So this is kind of exciting. And this vehicle, I would assume, would become the regional vehicle. It's designed so it can operate on other commuter rail lines as well. I like this picture because it shows the inside of the vehicle. Now, this is not what our seat fabric's going to look like, but this is the fluid inside. And what's kind of cool about this is there's no doors in between. You know, I said I grew up in New York. I can remember going, you know, only the first 3 cars are pulling up to the platform. You got to get across the train, and you're opening doors and going in between and things like that. There's none of that on this. This is, if you've been on an articulated bus, it's kind of the same thing. You know, when you look at it, it's all open. Now, there's a pathway in the engine, the power plant unit, but there's no exterior doors. You never go between cars because it's all connected together as a multiple unit vehicle. So it's kind of cool, and it feels good. Even the operator, you know, it's double-ended, goes from one end to the other when they change directions. And I know that because when we were over there at the plant, I got to run one of these and do that. So you never even have to get out of it and hit the platform to walk. You can just walk straight through the center of it. It's efficient, it moves fast. I kind of love this picture because this is the operator's compartment. It makes you want to get in one of these things and run it, you know. And this is the actual compartment. Now, I think there'd be some additional equipment with PTC, but this is what they're running in Europe. And like I said, having been in one of these, that's the way it looks. So this is kind of exciting. It's a new step, I think, for the folks here, you know, in Texas. Of course, we're going to come online with PTC in these new vehicles. And as I said, if you're on the Cotton Belt line, and, you know, we'll be running the first train sets for some testing and things like that probably as early as April. So you'll see our vehicle out there, and I think it'll be pretty clear that, hey, this is something new. So that's it. Hopefully I didn't talk too much, and there's my information if anybody has questions or wants to email. You know, we're excited about this. We're ready to talk about it. It's going to happen, and you know, hopefully at some point I'll see all of you the day that we cut the ribbon, you know, and run the first ones in revenue service, because we're excited to kind of get this thing going. So thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is Gary Thomas, and I work for DART. For a long time, I've worked for DART. And Tom and I were reminiscing. I've been executive director since 2001, and it's been quite a ride. You know, Bob, as you were showing the flirt car, I was looking at the RDCs have come a long way from when we opened the first TRE and we had the old bed cars on the TRE. Some of y'all are certainly familiar with that. They've changed quite a bit since then. I also want to recognize Paul Ballard, the CEO of the T. Paul is my counterpart in Fort Worth and doing a great job. It's almost 9 o'clock. I'll be brief, and because I know everybody's tired and you've got a big day tomorrow, I'll run through these fairly quickly. Just to remind folks that DART is a multimodal system. We have 120 plus bus routes, 90 miles of light rail. As Joe said earlier, the longest light rail system in North America. And my folks will hear me say that a lot. They hear me say it so often that they'll kind of snicker in the background because I'll say it 2 or 3 times a day. But why? Because who would have ever thought in North Texas that we'd have the longest light rail system in North America? Now, some people will argue that's because And I was talking to someone from San Francisco earlier, and they said, well, it's TOD, but in Texas, it's called Texas-Oriented Development, and that's called sprawl. And we're not, we're not constrained by rivers, oceans, mountains, and other barriers. So we do sprawl, and we do it very, very well. Consequently, as transportation planners, we've got to figure out how to get all those people where they want to go, because people in our region, certainly, and certainly in Joe's region, they tend to want to move further and further out, and then it's our responsibility, and I say globally, our responsibility as transportation providers in general. But we do have the longest light rail system in North America, and our biggest challenge as we talk about rail is how can we do more quicker, and I mentioned that earlier. We jointly operate the 35 miles of commuter rail on TRE between Fort Worth and Dallas, paratransit, Vanpool. And at the end of the year, literally, we provide just shy of 110 million trips on our systems. Now, this is our light rail map. Many of you are very familiar with it, where it goes, what it does. It's a hub and spoke system that generally works really well. If you're, when we first opened that very first section of the red line, blue line, that was fun, 24 miles, and it went a few places, and then we doubled it. We got up to 45 miles, and that was better because we went a few more places, and now we're up to 90 miles. And so we connect a lot of places and a lot of people, but we still don't cover every place. And so that's, from a transportation or transit agency, that's one of our challenges as we look to the future. How do we continue to provide people a choice? And that's what we're really in the business about. Joe said it best. If we provide people quality choices, a lot of people are going to get out of their car. They're tired of sitting in the congestion on the highway, wherever they are. But you have to give them a quality choice, and that's what we're all about as we continue to expand our service. Now, some of the things that we're doing, when we talk about our light rail system, and many of y'all have been involved in this program over the last several years, people will say, well, we're kind of on the downward slide of a very large capital program, $3.5–4 billion capital program. We're starting to wind that up. Now, if you go to my planners right now and say, yeah, you're on the downward slide of a large capital program, they're probably going to throw something at you or hit you, because they're working on several large billion-dollar projects that we're trying to figure out. We don't have funding for today, but everybody wants them today. So we're trying to figure out how to do those quicker, how we can make those happen. But that's because we've already moved past. Dave, you know how this works. We already moved past the projects that are under construction. Well, it's under construction. It'll be fine. Now we need to worry about is the party, right? And people like Dave and others are going to make sure that the rails are parallel and the ties are all spaced where they ought to be, and the signals all work, and the overhead catenary works fine. But it is important to kind of go back and say, oh yeah, we do have some projects that are under construction, and they will open later this year. The Blue Line extension to the University of North Texas, one of the shorter extensions that we've had, but through one of the parts of Dallas. If you're familiar with this part of Dallas, is very, very unique because there's a lot of up and down, there's a lot of trees, and there's a lot of open land that's waiting to be developed. So we're working very closely with the City of Dallas on what that looks like, what that development looks like, how this development develops. And of course, University of North Texas is pretty excited about it too, because when we finish this, all of their campuses will be connected by rail, whether it be in southern Dallas, downtown Dallas, Denton, as they go and transfer at Trinity Mills to the A train, or in Fort Worth, and they get there on TRE. Excited about it. But as you saw, and I talked about, the hub and spoke system is great until you have an issue in downtown Dallas, because now we've got red line, orange line, blue line, green line, all come through downtown Dallas on a single corridor. Some of you might remember about 2 years ago there was a fire in a hotel that was under construction in downtown, and of course, inevitably, it always happens during peak period, morning or evening picket. It always happens in peak period. The fire department comes out, they park their trucks on our right-of-way. They lay their hoses across. They don't like it when you run trains across hoses. That's a bad thing, apparently. And so when it happens, then we're forced to figure out how to turn trains, alter the trips. And as Paul and Bob rode over tonight, they were riding on the Orange Line. They got on about 10 till 5 or so at Union Station. They said, those trains are really crowded. And they really are crowded. And so we have two issues. One, we have a capacity issue. Who would have thought? We have a capacity issue, and we have a flexibility issue in downtown Dallas. So we've been working on our second alignment since 2008-ish, and talking about where we might go. And of course, everybody has an opinion. Everybody is offered their opinion. They're willing to help us decide where the second alignment ought to go. And so we've been working on narrowing that down. And the most recent phase of that, we ended up with about 9 alternatives. You can see a lot of them here, and just very, very briefly, this is American Airlines Center right there. And of course, you come down, you go on Lamar, you cut across on Young or Marilla, and then you tie back into the Green Line on the east side of downtown. And of course, there's a variety of ways to do that. So we've worked very closely with a lot of the stakeholders, a lot of the property owners, everybody that can and has offered an opinion on where that alignment ought to be, and came up with this alignment. And generally, what that alignment does is it branches off right around American Airlines Station, or American Airlines Center at Victory Station, and it comes south on Lamar. It goes underground right as we go past the Perot Museum, Woodall Rogers. It goes into a subway. We'd have what we call our Metro Center Station, where it intersects with the existing mall. It would continue to turn to the east and end up on Young, going in front of the City Hall. And then here we have to make a decision. We've got Jackson Street is the dash line, Young Street is the solid line, Wood Street is the street in between that's not marked. And we're trying to figure out where is that best alignment, what works best with all of the property owners. The old Stadler Hilton Hotel is right in this area. Of course, First Presbyterian Church is right in this area. Excuse me. Everybody certainly is very interested in the project. They just want to make sure they understand how it impacts their property and obviously minimizes that impact on their property. And then we tie back into the Green Line over here. Now there's a blue line, that little blue piece right there. It's not coincidental, and the fact that this project is slated for completion in 2021 is not coincidental either. The FTA has a program called Core Capacity Program, and it's exactly what it is, and it's a new pot of money. And a lot of people have said, Gary, why all of a sudden are you so anxious to do this project? And it's because that core capacity money is kind of new, and not a lot of people are pursuing it yet. As a matter of fact, Chicago is really the only other agency that has a project moving forward. Charlotte, New York also has some interest in the core capacity pot, but the idea is the quicker we can get in there, the less competition we have for that money, the better off that we'll be in getting the grant. Bob kind of walked through their scenario. As far as the grant money goes, we're hoping to get our rating next month in February. We're optimistic. Obviously, there's two pieces to this. The other piece is lengthening 28 of our at-grade platforms so we can run 3-car trains throughout the system. Today, we can run 3-car trains on the Green Line. All the new stations that have opened up on the Orange Line obviously can accommodate 3-car trains, but the older pieces of our line, the Red Line, Blue Line, they can only accommodate the 2-car trains. So we'll lengthen 28 of those platforms. So 2 separate grants, both core capacity, working through the FTA, optimistic on how that will turn out. We'll know better next month. But this Blue Line and the 2021 dates really kind of line up with high-speed rail. You know, when the high-speed rail folks showed up and said, we're going to have this project done, excuse me for a second, we're going to have this project done in 2021, We said, great, that's wonderful, but how are we going to, and I'm going to skip ahead, and I'll come back to these. There you go, Travis. It's a good-looking train, huh? How are we going to connect that high-speed rail train to the system? And obviously that's very critical as we continue to plan transportation strategies for North Texas. So that we're not sure yet, but the northernmost station that's been published is right here. That's the one that spans over 30, and there's one a little bit south of there as well. And so we want to make sure that wherever it lands, that we're close by. If it's further south, then we've got a Cedar station that's close by. If it lands at the northernmost station, our convention center station is literally across the parking lot from it. So we're confident that they're going to be complete in revenue service by 2021, and we've got to be prepared to accommodate the people getting off that train multiple times a day, figuring out where they're going to go. And if you look at models around the world, we know that the way the mode splits work out, a third of the people will get in some type of vehicle, car or whatever. A third of the people are going to walk, get a bike, or maybe take a taxi to where they want to go. And the other third of the people are going to look for public transportation. And fortunately, we've got a system that we think can accommodate that, the third, but we've got, so every 30 minutes or whatever it is, we're going to have a few hundred people that are going to want to get on transit. And we've got to be prepared for that. So that's, we're not doing the second alignment because of that, but it's not totally coincidental either. So that's really exciting as we look at how this falls together. Also, the DFW Airport Station, Bob talked a lot about that, just opened recently, a little over a year ago. Streetcar Phase 1, that's another thing that I get pretty excited about it, and people look at me and say, Thomas, you're too much of a geek, a transit geek, because what's exciting to me about the streetcar is this is the only dual mode vehicle in the United States that operates both on overhead catenary and batteries. Now, it's not the first in the world, certainly, but it's the first in the United States, and it's also manufactured by a U.S. manufacturer, Brookville, out of Brookville, Pennsylvania. Now, the challenge that a lot of traditional streetcar people have been having is how to do the battery part. Brookville has been making battery-powered mining equipment since the 1920s, so that was something in their wheelhouse. And then the streetcar piece they've been doing more recently, certainly, but they put it together. We've got 2 of these streetcars. We've got 2 more on order. And Phase 1, I often talk, so it's a cool car. It goes across the Houston Street Viaduct without an overhead catenary. The viaduct is historic. In our world, historic is about 100 years old. I think it's the oldest structure in North Texas that we haven't torn down yet. In Phase 1, people say, so where does it go? It goes from Union Station, across the bridge to El Phoenix. And people say, why El Phoenix? That's where we ran out of money. It's not a bad place to run out of money. Travis has been there with me. It's a great ride over and wonderful enchiladas. In a more serious note, we got, it's an interesting, unique combination. Our COG, or MPO, got the grant. It was a Tiger grant. The city of Dallas owns the project. Unlike a lot of places around the country where the city said, we can do this, the city of Dallas said, we don't want to do this, Dart, y'all do this. And so the city owns it. We built it, operated for the city, and COG actually received the grant. That's where the grant got us. It got us over the bridge. Phase 2 has already started construction, and it will go to Bishop Arts. If you're familiar with our community, you know that's just down the road a little bit, and that will open in August of this year, so well underway. The other thing I want to point out is there are 3 transit agencies in North Texas. We all work very, very closely together on a lot of different things. You heard Bob talk about, we work very closely with DCTA on the A train, their connection with us at Trinity Mills. Of course, we've been jointly operating the TRE for many, many years now with our partners to the west, the T, and look forward on that Cotton Belt line as they operate the western side, us getting the eastern side laid out. There's a Cotton Belt line, as you can see it. DART owns it basically from there to Wiley. There's some freight. Kansas KCS has a facility over here. They get on our Cotton Belt line and they come over to the junction by UTD and they head up to the north on their lines. So there's not a lot of freight from about this point over to downtown Carrollton, and then you get into Fort Worth and Western Territory once you get west of Carrollton. So that's the project. The T, as Bob talked about, is from here over to downtown. And we're working on the eastern side, putting together some type of funding mechanism. If we can phase it, we'll do that. Phases that make sense, Addison to Carrollton to the airport, and Addison back to the east, to at least Richardson and Plano. If we can figure out how to do the entire project in one sweep, that's certainly beneficial to everybody. As I said, we will, well, I don't imagine, I know that we'll have a car, either the Flirt car or a car with very similar or the same dimensions, to make sure it's compatible across the corridor. As you might imagine, the airport is attractive. Everybody gets excited about it. But the bulk of that ridership on that corridor is across the corridor. It's going from Fort Worth to Carrollton, Plano, Richardson, wherever they're going. And so it makes sense that we certainly connect to the airport, but it also makes sense that we have the planning and the service lined out so you can get across the corridor easily and conveniently. The other thing that we're working on, and I know this isn't rail, but rail doesn't go everywhere and it doesn't get you to your front door typically. And so how do you do that? We've actually partnered with Uber, Lyft, Zipcar, Toyota. You probably have heard is building their new facility in Plano. Toyota is going to provide somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 cars for a car sharing program also. We've got a mobile ticketing app that we share with the T and DCTA. And if you go to that mobile ticketing app, you'll find all of these links on that app. So if you wanted to step out your front door, and I know no one would ride Uber like to this meeting, of course. They would ride Uber to the train station and then take the train the rest of the way, or they'd take the train to the train station and then ride Uber the last 2 blocks. But it's about first mile, last mile, right? That's what it's really all about. How do you get people the entire trip? And so we've started partnering with Uber, Lyft, Zipcar, and others. And so right now, if you go to our mobile ticketing app, you'll find them on the app. There's a link. It's a nice link. But the goal is to be able to plan your entire trip, just like you would on the Uber website. You'll be able to plan your entire trip from point A to point B, a combination of modes, pay for it on the app. So maybe you do walk out and maybe you do drive to the train station, get on the train, take the train wherever you want to go. Then the Uber car meets you at that train station where you get off at the designated time and takes you your final trip. That's the goal. Uber is saying, Gary, we want to do a pilot and we're ready to go. Our folks are saying, we want to do a pilot too and we're ready to go as well. Now, our ready to go and they're ready to go is a little bit different. Their ready to go is like yesterday. Our ready to go is, well, give us another 3, 4, 5 months and we'll make sure that we've got all our ducks in a row. So that's pretty exciting, and I really do think that pilot will be up and running by the spring of this year. I talked a little bit about the streetcar, where we're going to go, what it's going to do, and of course the extension as it cuts across, but also looking in the downtown area, what's that streetcar going to do? Where are we going to go in downtown? And yes, many of us can say, well, gosh, history just repeats itself, right? Because We know that the streetcars were here up until 1956, and then they went away for a variety of reasons, and now we're bringing them back, and in many cases bringing them back in almost the same place that they were to begin with. So it is kind of fun to see and watch that go, but again, as we talk about the streetcar alignment, everybody's talking about it not necessarily from a transportation perspective, but as Joe pointed out, from an economic development perspective. They're going to make money off of this, off of us, off of the transportation system. So we'll continue to work on that. Obviously, we continue to work on how we capture that value. Joe has done a great job putting that funding package together between Austin and San Antonio, and a lot can be learned from that. I mentioned high-speed rail, and that's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
We want it done faster, but tell me, how long has the Blue Line extension been in the works?
Blue Line extension is under construction today.
Yeah.
Gosh, it was probably drawn on a map in the early 80s, I would guess.
But when did work start?
The work actually started, design work started 3 years ago, perhaps.
Okay. That's actually remarkable. I'm from Seattle. We have all of, I think, 11 miles of light rail. And we're getting another mile and a half, which is half the length of your extension, and it's taking about 3 years. And I live at the end of that mile and a half, and I ride the bus every morning as a result. So I don't think, and not just Art, everybody here, you got nothing to apologize for. The progress you're making is really remarkable. Thank you very much. Any questions? If not, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Let's hear it for these guys.
All right, folks, we'll start bright and early at 8:30 tomorrow morning, and hope to see you then. Safe travels home, or if you're here in the hotel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, here's what I use all the time. I love it.
I love it. It's great.
Thanks for being with us, Gary.
My pleasure. It's good stuff.
Anytime we can help you, let us know.